Every tennis player dreams of having a forehand that will let them dictate play and dominate opponents. A forehand that they can hit with both power and spin and accuracy. A forehand that has variety and one that they feel truly confident hitting aggressively under pressure in a match situation. Yet despite every player having this dream, very few go on to make it a reality because there is one major problem that holds players back and prevents them from developing the sort of forehand they really want. In this video, I'm going to explain what that one problem is and how to solve it, because this is a problem that I've solved twice myself within my own game. Firstly, I solved it back when I was playing right-handed, but now that I switched from playing right-handed to left-handed, I've been able to solve this problem with my left hand as well. So I'm going to explain the process that I used so you can do the same and turn your forehand into a true weapon. So if you lack the ability to hit with a variety of power and a variety of spin with a decent level of accuracy on a consistent basis, it tells you that you've got a problem with your timing, and more specifically it means that you're late on your forehand. Now a lot of players know they're late because they're hitting the ball back here or back here somewhere, but I also find there's a lot of other players that think they've got good timing because they're meeting the ball out in front of the body, when in actual fact they don't, because they're compensating in different ways. And often these players are playing at a slightly higher level, maybe the 4-0, maybe the 4-5 level. They can hit some good shots, but when they try to hit with a variety of spin, and especially when they try to hit with more power, they tend to make too many mistakes, because there's three parts to having good timing. There's where we make contact with the ball, and it's going to vary a little bit dependent on the height of the shot, dependent on what grip we're using, and a little bit to do with what stance that we're hitting from, but it's going to be just a little bit out in front of our body on a general basis, and our body needs to be facing roughly forwards when we make contact. But in addition to where we make contact relative to our body, we've also got how we sequence our kinetic chain. So the precise order in which we drive through our hip, followed by our torso, followed by the arm and the racket coming through to contact. If you don't get the sequence quite right, you don't create racket head speed as efficiently, which creates a lot of challenges. And here, one of the big problems is there's no right or wrong way to do it. I actually hit things slightly differently on my right hand to my left hand. So when I used to play right-handed, I had a little bit more of a next-gen style. Although I used an Eastern grip, I had a high elbow, and I used to drive through my hip and create my racket lag at the same time, and I would have a bent arm and then whip it through to contact. Whereas with my left hand, I use a semi-Western grip. I have a straight arm, and now I initiate my racket drop, or I release my racket first, then I start my hip drive, getting to more of a classical position, and then come through to contact. So I do it slightly differently on each side, because when I started playing left-handed, I just couldn't make it work in the same way that I did right-handed. So one of the big challenges for you is you've got to find out exactly what works for you, because we need to sequence the kinetic chain in the right order. But then the third part that we've got is going to be how far through we are on our swing path when we make contact with the ball. Because the idea is that we've done all the hard work. We've driven through the big muscles, we've created the stretch reflex, and then we're effectively just throwing the racket through to contact. So that last little portion, we don't have a vice-like grip on our racket. We've got fairly low tension in our forearms and our chest, and that enables us to control the angle of the racket face and maintain accuracy when we're hitting with power and spin. What happens for a lot of players is they're not quite sequencing things in the right order, or they're not quite getting enough work done, so then they've got that excess tension in their muscles. And players compensate in different ways. So sometimes you'll see players, yes, they're making contact out in front of the body, but they haven't fully rotated their body, so they're still partially side on when they make contact. Or maybe they get the body facing forward, but they compensate with extra tension in the arm, so they've got a lot of tension when they make contact. Or some players, they kind of pull off the ball to find ways to create the space. But it's all about sequencing in the correct order and having done most of the work when we make contact, so we can be fairly relaxed at contact. And the big challenge here is that players start their swing too late relative to the flight of the ball and the speed that they're swinging at. That's the big problem that you've got to solve, and it's a tricky problem to solve because you have to start your swing counterintuitively early in order to sequence things in the correct way. So how do we fix the problem so you can start your swing sooner and develop good timing? Well, unfortunately, this is easier said than done, which is why most players fail to ever develop the type of forehand that they really want. There can be a number of different things that you have to address in order to develop good timing. The first one is going to be fixing late preparation. If you're the sort of player that hits the ball back here or back here somewhere, it is basically a guarantee that you're not preparing quickly enough. If you don't get prepared and set up in the right position in time, it then causes you to start your swing too late. So you might need to fix that one first, but I'm not going to go into detail about that in this video because I cover it in so many other videos. What I want to focus on here is how to fix timing issues and how to start your swing sooner, provided you're already set up in the right position in time. So the next part of the solution happens on the practice court, and it's about breaking bad habits to do with when you start your swing. Because if you've been playing tennis for a while, you are going to have started your swing too late thousands and thousands and thousands of times. So it's a heavily ingrained bad habit that you need to try and break. And that's why I said previously that you have to start your swing counterintuitively early. Because for however long you have seen the ball coming towards you and you've started your swing at the wrong time, so now what you're going to have to do is recalibrate. So you're going to start your swing maybe 1/10, 2/10, 3/10, 4/10 of a second sooner. And they are really small increments of time, so it's really hard to think about that, which is why it's so hard to do. So what I did, learning to play left-handed, is I did a lot of ball machine work. I would set up a specific feed, so maybe I'm just doing a neutral stance forehand, and then I would hit shots, and I would find out whether my timing was good or bad. And generally my timing was bad to start with, and then I would have to adjust my timing. So generally I'd be late on the shot. So depending on when the ball bounced, so maybe I started my racket drop and my hip drive as the ball was bouncing on a specific feed. And then because I was late on contact, I know that I need to start my swing sooner. So I would then try and start my racket drop and my hip drive just before the ball bounced. So that would then enable me to have enough time and space to meet the ball in the correct position. So it's really going to be dependent on the feed that you're dealing with, because for another feed, so maybe I'm feeding a higher, more floating ball, now if I start my swing before the ball bounces, I end up being just completely too early. So instead, for this particular ball, maybe I need to start my swing just after the ball bounces in order to get the right timing and the sequencing of my kinetic chain. So I went through it very laboriously over a period of time, just doing that on different types of feed so that I could kind of build up a memory bank of, okay, the ball is flying like this. That means I need to start my swing at a certain time relative to the bounce of the ball in order to make contact with this ball. And then obviously when I was practicing with people, I also thought about the same thing. But it really is counterintuitively early, and it really is a bad habit that you've got to break. So you're going to have to think about it over and over again, and it's probably going to feel really weird before you're able to get it right, because until you get things early enough, you can't quite get the sequencing. But then once you get it, it just feels completely different, and it feels so much more effortless, and you've kind of unlocked things, but it's a real challenge to get to that point. Now, for a very small percentage of you, working on what I've just explained might be enough to fix the problem. But realistically, for the vast majority of you, it still won't let you develop timing that's going to give you the sort of forehand that you really want. And I say that with the utmost confidence because this was a problem that I dealt with for most of my younger life. I grew up playing tennis right-handed. I was a decent low-level county player in England. Then I went into coaching after university, and I coached for a number of years. And even despite doing all those things, I still didn't have good timing on my forehand. I was playing at the 5-0 level, but it was because I was an absolute grinder. I was fast, I worked really hard on my fitness, and I was smart. I was just willing to get the ball back and wait for people to miss. So it let me beat a lot of people, but then when you come up against anyone good that has good timing, they just wipe you off the court. And that was just the reality of the way that tennis was for me. I tried practicing, I did everything that I could, I knew what I was supposed to do, but I just wasn't able to develop good timing because I had visual deficits and coordination deficits that were preventing me reading the ball and adjusting my kinetic chain accurately enough. And this is is the reality for most adult tennis players. I've now assessed a couple of hundred adult tennis players, and every single player that I've assessed had multiple visual deficits that were interfering with their ability to read the flight of the ball, and multiple different coordination deficits that are interfering with their ability to both start the swing at the right time and then sequence their kinetic chain and adjust the swing speed and the swing path in the way that they needed to. The good news is that it's possible to change that. I was able to do that with my right hand and get to the point where my forehand was a real weapon, and that's why now I'm practicing left-handed. I'm able to improve relatively quickly, and it just keeps on getting better and better because my systems are already capable of doing it. It's also possible for you to do the same by training and improving how the underlying systems function. That's then going to enable you to start your swing soon enough, and it's going to enable you to improve the sequencing of your kinetic chain. If that's something that you would like to learn how to do, I've got a free class that's going to teach you all about it. I'll place a link to it down in the description so that you can learn more. But hopefully what I've explained here makes sense. In order to have good timing, we have these three parts to it. You need the good timing if you're going to be able to hit with a variety of spin, a variety of power, maintaining accuracy on a consistent basis. If you're preparing late, you've obviously got to fix that first. I've got a number of different videos that talk about it. But then it's about the timing. I've explained what I did. Try it yourself, record yourself, see what's going on, and if you don't get the result that you want, there's going to be an underlying reason why. There is stuff that you can do about that as well, if that's something you want to learn about. Thanks for watching. Any questions or comments, leave them down below. I'll catch you next time.